it's an oxymoron, Carlos, that tooling or the way, like, because we're discussing the world of software, typically what happens is it has to be some sort of tech heavy founder that has to come in to build because they have to. There's a lot of things that goes into building the machine. But unfortunately, tech founders have this Achilles heel because for them it's all about tech.
Welcome to the 1% Edge podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary guests committed to getting 1% better every day. Today's topic, building a company based on delivering value. And to kind of frame it a little bit, I think, and my guest thinks a little bit, because we talked about this at a time, most companies love to start with talking about their solution, their feature functions, and how great they are. Some companies like to set up that conversation and talk about the actual problems that those solutions actually solve, to start out with. But I think the best companies, what they like to focus on is not only the problems, but the outcomes, the impact, the value that their users and the owners of that technology actually get. And that conversation varies based on who your audience is. But to help us out with that, I'm honored to have Ashok Rajan. Did I say it right?
That's right.
All right. Founder and CEO of Pristine Data AI. Welcome to the show, Ashok.
Thank you, Carlos. It's a pleasure to be here. And first of all, just wanted to say we've had some great conversations about this. I feel like, just your company and everything that you do in terms of talking about value creation and value realization is near and dear to my heart. So, love. I'm eager and excited to be here.
Pleasure. And we did. So we thought, it'd be a great little podcast, especially for folks out there that are are trying to develop a startup or even are having a pivot point in an existing company. How do you do it with the customer in mind and what you deliver? But I started out with a long description of what it means to have a startup that's focused on delivering value. Ashok, in your mind, is it mean something similar? Is it different? What's your view?
Oh, actually, there is a lot of similarities to what you said. So, first, I just want to sort of anchor this and get your agreement. Sort of the three pillars I would say is right off the bat for a customer or any product or service that someone wants to purchase, everyone's thinking in their mind, what's my ROI? What's the return on investment that I get? Very rarely I've been on both sides of the table, Carlos, like where I've purchased software or services from someone, everyone does, or and on the other side trying to sell, and that's going through the person's mind. It's like, okay, you want me to spend $100,000, you want me to spend $2 million, can I get 20 million out of this? Like, what is it? That's what's going through the mind. So the first thing is ROI, and then the next thing is that how can I use this? Like, what are all the places that I can use this? Because this is the sort of what we talked about, value assessment. That's the first part. And then automatically the mind goes to, okay, how am I going to do value realization? Okay, I can see the concept of how I might make money, but where all can I plug this in to maximize that? And then, of course, like, hey, the third pillar is like, is it compelling enough for me from an economic perspective? Are we creating compelling value? So I would just keep my answer to everyone, whether it's a startup or a large company, should be thinking in terms of those three pillars.
Excellent. So um, I'm trying to think about how we break this conversation down. So let's start with um, maybe more the economic buyers, the people that actually make the buying decision. When you say ROI, like you said, hey, is it going to save me $1 million or make me $1 million? And I see the value there. But usually it's a committee making a buying decision, right?
That's right. That is right.
And you got procurement having their perspective, you got the business leaders having their perspective, and sometimes we forget about the users having a perspective. And there's no user out there going, wow, it's going to save $1 million. They're thinking about their own environment. So when we think about value to the different users, how should companies work to try to understand what that means based on the different levels of buyers?
That's a great question, Carlos. So we'll make some assumptions here since I feel like we both have a lot of rich experience in enterprise selling. this I feel this is extremely relevant whether you're a startup or an enterprise. But anytime the ticker, whatever it is that you're trying to sell these days, I feel maybe greater than 50,000 annual contract value, you're going to have more than one person that needs to look and approve the software. That's the name of the game. And then the larger your ticket size, the more people that get involved in the room that are making the decision. So
Right.
now buying happens as a committee. So we're having the discussion that says, okay, there is a committee of people that are going to influence the buying, and therefore, it is literally like six blind men and the elephant. Each person looks at the elephant, but has a completely different point of view on what they want or what they think it is, and what it's going to do for them. So you made a great example. So I'm in Martech, sales tech Martech. Uh, Clearly, my economic buyer or the person that I'm going to generate the most value for could be a CMO or a CRO. But almost instantly, if I'm going to sell a product that's, let's say, a six-figure ARR, and ACV, then I'm certain that the CIO will get involved because they want to know, hey, which budget is this coming out of? Is it marketing? Is it mine? And then there is data privacy issue as soon as I throw the AI. So, and then they start thinking about, are there other costs? Like, does my team need to get involved in the integration? I already committed at the C-suite. So that's just the CIO's mind that's going through all these things. And like you said, I could go across the world to the CFO. The CFO has a different point of view, and then they're thinking. So the CRO or the CMO is buying it because they think that it'll actually make a difference to their revenue, their pipeline. So they're all about increasing revenue. Very rarely, unless the CFO gets involved, they're thinking about optimizing cost. Right? It's an economic cycle. But the CFO, like you rightly pointed out, is always thinking, okay, I could give the CIO some headcount to do this project, or maybe I can go buy this and then I can kill two birds in one stone. So I'll just stop there. Just at the C-suite, you can see that people are looking at that same problem, and the value that they demand is completely different. And then, of course, if you go down vertically into the org, CMO's thinking, hey, I'm going to get all this done. Now you get to a marketing ops person or a revenue rev ops person, the person's actually using the tool. Their perception of value is completely different. Does it actually help save some time during my day? Maybe it's not even an economic value. It's more like, hey, it takes me too long to do this. I'm always getting harangued by my superiors to get this done in 1 hour. Oh, this tool says it can do it in 10 minutes. I like that. So again, the to keep my answer brief there, I actually think that it's incumbent on the person who's trying to pitch anything, good or service, that when they walk into a room or when they look at this committee, they need to be knowledgeable on the, hey, what is their perception of value, and they need to address all those issues.
I agree 100%. The other thing I was thinking about, so we got this ROI piece. You talked about the using it or like the use case behind it. Here's a question for you. A lot of times founders, and you've sat on both sides of this table, uh,
Right.
but founders get, it's their baby. So they get so excited about the widget and what
Yep.
it does that they get blindsided to realize that, hey, the other person at the side of the table has got to create a business case. They have to say, this is what it's going to do. This is how it's going to help improve our business. And sometimes founders get too excited about the solution and they get lost in that. Any advice on how do you founders, you know, how do you like create this ground level of understanding what's the use case? How are people going to use it? How are different people going to use it? And is it going to be you know different enough for them to want to use
Totally. Again, love the question. I'm going to say something. Hopefully, like, hey, not controversial, not meant to hurt any feelings. It's an oxymoron, Carlos, that tooling or the way, because we're discussing the world of software. Typically, what happens is it has to be some sort of tech heavy founder that has to come in to build because they have to. There's a lot of things that goes into building a machine. But unfortunately, tech founders have this Achilles heel because for them it's all about the tech. Uh, Whereas this is where I feel like, you know in my career, early on in my career, I had great mentors, and then I could clearly see that hey, the tech is just a means to the end. The tech is just a means to the end. You should not be emotionally attached to it at all. Uh, the One of my mentors said to me, "Hey, does it matter? So if you're talking about lead generation, does it matter if there is a hamster running on a wheel and occasionally it throws like a ping pong ball that says go talk to HP today, and if that converts leads, then feed the hamster well, right? Keep the treadmill well oiled, or whatever your example is." So to me, I really want to call that out, and especially in the San Francisco Bay Area that I live, this is a deep rooted issue that people want to build tech because they think that's the sign of innovation. And they really don't think of value creation as an innovation. Back to what we were talking about. So if you flip on it and say, no, no, it's value creation that I care about, I don't care how I create the value, then my advice to anyone who's starting a company would be go talk to your end user. And then keep on iterating with the end user until the end user says, hey, this is of extreme value. And I just want to call this out. It's an interesting thing that which again, that's why I said it's an opposite viewpoint. Um, One of these big, the name slips my mind, is the biggest one. That's the startup foundry in the Bay Area. They have these videos and how to start a startup and so on. Sam Altman's thing that they do. And then they actually say, hey, no, no, what? And this one really resonated with me, Carlos. They said, hey, a founder should basically be sitting across from someone who has such a headache that literally if you place a brick in front of them and that's the only solution they have to the problem, they're willing to smash their head. That is, you need to identify something that's such an intense problem for them first. Then you need to say, okay, Carlos, the only thing I have right now in front of you is a brick. Will you use it? It sounds crazy, but you see what I'm saying? The tech
It
doesn't come
is.
with
It's
the
got to be something there's enough urgency to want to change.
That's right, and they're willing to take something that's half baked. And so back to your the whole founder, and I think I'm struggling through this every day. You have to talk to a lot of people, but unfortunately, when you talk to a lot of people, the opposite thing happens. People are always asking you different things. They're like, hey, can you add this one thing? Hey, did you see this other company that's doing that? And then that becomes the sort of it's the built-in mechanism where then the tech founders technology takes over and they're like, oh, I need to out innovate these guys, instead of saying, no, I'm going to find Carlos who has a lot of pain in this one topic, and I'm going to make sure that I just delight the hell out of Carlos. And that's it. I don't care what Don says or what somebody else says. I'm just going to focus on Carlos. So I think that gets back to it's not just value creation, but also really knowing like who's your ICP, whose pain are you trying to solve?
Solve.
Just be laser focused on that.
I like that because it's funny. I dealt with a successful. I'm going to call it a startup. They ended up getting bought by a company I was working with, and I ended up talking to them. And I had talked to them before they got acquired and after because I went after them as a prospect early on, and they didn't go with me. They didn't go with anybody because basically they felt like we don't have a sales problem. We show up, we demo the product, people buy it.
Right?
When they finally got bought by a company I worked with and we decided to work with together, it was interesting. I would say, well, why do people buy you? Well, we're great technology. And they had not spent, they had these, I'll take it back. They did produce a ton of value for certain customers, but those stories were trapped with certain individual reps because as a
Right?
company, that wasn't a major focus. And they had
That's
to
right.
go through this exercise that we worked on to pull those stories out. And in their case, I'm not going to name any names, but like, for example, Delta Airlines are the customer of those. And as we start digging under the covers on why they bought it, I mean, it came up with a ton of value. Like they really were an asset for Delta, but you had to go find the people that knew that.
Absolutely. And then that gets to the next part, right? So, hey, but this is all startup stages that we're talking about, Carlos. Like, if you say, hey, just the first two stages of a startup, and then we've shared some interesting notes. By the way, I loved the book that you sent me by Raj Gupta.
Oh, good,
That's
good.
so. Hey, the one, the 1 to 10, right?
Yep.
So, in fact, what he talks about a lot, and I'm going to just go through the two stages, which is like, hey, you talk about founder-led growth, and then, okay, now I've done a good job, Carlos. I've done this founder led growth. I'm able to connect with people. I've got the first part of the equation right. Now I need to scale. But how do I scale? Because I know how to tell the story. I've learned all these things through my school of hard knocks over the last 12 months. And I falter because now the next person that I recruit, it's a real problem for a founder. What you said is a problem across the organization, whether it's a startup or whether it's a large enterprise. This, what becomes tribal knowledge, I actually think it starts very early in the process. Like a startup, I know people who are Series A, Series B who are having this problem going. How come I'm able to go to an event? This is a CEO that's saying, I'm able to go to an event and I just was able to talk to four people. But, and then the excuses start flying. Oh, you have the founder title, they respond to you. No, it's just that the founder or the person, you nailed it, Carlos. It's like the knowledge that I have, not the knowledge of the product, but again, the knowledge of the value creation, the knowledge of who is my end user, what is the story that will resonate with them. I think you hit the nail on its head. Like that knowledge needs to permeate across the company from the beginning. Like that needs to be like a cultural thing that companies do. Hey, when you come in, I don't want you to understand the product. I want you to understand like how we create value for people. And then, hey, what are their challenges and pain points? I think that will be a great way to go.
It's funny because so we both know Don Smith because we both worked with him. When I went to work in a company called Clarify, we had, this is the early days. eh, Um, every offer letter had this line about do whatever it takes.
Right,
Now, it didn't mean do anything illegally, just to be clear, but it was basically about do whatever it takes, like to make the customer happy, to basically create a raving fan at the end of the day.
right,
And uh, I didn't think about it back then, but in me, it instilled this. Like even because one of the things we did as part of onboarding, we had to spend one day at the support desk taking calls,
right,
and people would call with problems, and we all had this mindset about, well, we're here to help you, and we do whatever it took to try to help the customer overcome
right.
that. And that also creates a value for people because it's not just about tech, it's how they're treated as a customer as well.
Right. No, 100%. I first of all, like, hey, can we add a middle name for Don? Don the God Smith. So hey, he's a god among men. I think he's
You
just
can't, I don't want it to go to his head.
no, no. I no, no. Hey, like the just love Don, man. Like hey, that's like the responses leadership team, and Don is like some of the greatest people I worked with. But I wanna hone in on something you said because I'm going to go off my experience, and I feel like Carlos, there is plenty of time that has passed that the individuals, and I might throw some names here. It's okay.
Yep.
Uh, but this is I'm going to totally date myself. This is the year 2000, and so I'm working for this company called Digital Impact, and we're actually building an email platform. And then all I hear is, the SVP of my org goes, "Hey, I'm basically building backend engineering at the point, but they know that I'm kind of semi decent talking to customers because I'd done a startup before. They're like, you need to go meet this customer, and he's very unhappy. And so but the engineering leadership team had basically shut this person out. Like, oh, this person is crazy, man. Always asking, pushing us to build something new. And I'm going to tell you, like, where again I feel the tech teams miss out the spark. Just remember the time frame. This is Y2K. So we go to this office, and this gentleman's name is Ted Ram. Again, he's a amazing, out there kind of brains. So Ted's at that point a director at Hotwire, and so he just starts saying, "Hey, it's crazy. Do you know that I just paid like two guys in my office, and you know what these guys do for me? And I'm paying them like six-figure salaries. All they do is people land on hotwire.com. Again, it's 2000, and then they say, okay, I want to sign up for your alerts or your newsletters. And then the first email we send is a welcome letter from the CEO. That's it. And now I'm paying two guys just to take the lists, pull the emails, and send this email out of your platform. This seems like a really stupid problem." And he goes, "Ashok, don't you think it's a stupid problem? I think you guys should just download the file, automatically send this email out. Well, send everyone a welcome message as soon as the newsletter, they sign up for this. This seems like stupid that I'm paying like two people to do this, right?" And all I'm saying is, I listen to this guy going, this is no brainer. Like we should have done this on our own. How come you're in this, right? But then I'm giving you the flip side of the equation. There is like a religious war going on this side, going, hey, we have like 200 things to do. This is not a priority for us. Why should we listen to this person? This is like one guy just shouting at whatever is going on. And so I'm just the reason I give you this example, Carlos, is that's the you need to run away from tech. I honestly feel again like I'm not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. Or like, hey, people get too religious about, hey, I want to build AI, I want to build the next LLM, I want to build the next whatever toaster. And I'm here thinking like, hey, maybe have you imagined that the toaster is already working fine and I don't need another toaster, or that's not the person doesn't eat bread. Maybe they're like, they have a gluten allergy. They don't want bread in the morning. Have you bothered to ask what is it that they want? So sorry, I went into the story, but I think I have so many examples like that where you just don't listen to the customer. You don't listen to their pain, and or and I feel like hopefully I'm not getting on my soapbox. I feel like it's in all stages of a company, and then sometimes the larger the company becomes, then the hubris sets in. Like, hey, big time. It's like, hey, look, we are large. We were successful before you came along, Shuck. You don't need to tell us how to do these things. Or Carlos, I don't need to listen to your value story, man. We already have like 1,000 customers and they're paying us. Why do we need to listen to you and this problem? So, I, again, start with the customers, start with their value, listen to them. I think is a good way to go.
No, it's interesting because I agree with you. And one of the things I think about too is like, we come up with a theory, of, hey, this is what the technology should do, and this is why, and this is the impact. And then we try to, we sell it to a customer. Let's say we get lucky and they actually buy it, and then they start using it. Well, I think it's like a loop, right? You constantly need to go back to product and kind of go, are they still using it that way? Have they found new ways of using it? Has the problem changed? The best lessons I've learned have been through the customers.
100%, 100%, and I couldn't agree with you more. And the even in my last company, which I'll try not to name, but it'll become pretty obvious. The one of the first projects I did, and Carlos, this is why I love everything that you do with your not just your podcast, but the whole value framework that you built. There was this discussion going on. I think it's like within the first 2 weeks of me joining officially, and then they had actually built a screen that's meant to show the customer what value they get out of the product. And all I would say is there were six of them sitting in the room, and they could not agree between themselves what it meant.
Wow.
And and it was all about how the technology worked. So the whole see, there's another angle that we should talk about is which you started this conversation. Really understanding like, hey, who is my buyer? What is their perception of value? It's not the same perception of value as a techie. A techie's perception of value for a model is, oh look, I have built something that spits out 100 attributes, and if you pay me a little extra, I can spit out 1,000 attributes. I'm like, hey, the first, but of what use is it to me? I would sound really intensely cruel if I said, hey, but what's going to solve for me? Why should I care? Like I have sat across so many customers who would actually do me the kindness of saying, this is all great, but why should I care? Right? And so it's the school of hard knocks where you go, okay, let's not say this. And then we have to build the whole value story around sales velocity. Like hey, completely turn this around. But yeah,
Yeah, it's whenever I talk to young companies and I say, hey, so what differentiate your software at the core? What's your main use case? And I get an answer back like, well, what do you want it to be? I'm like, okay, so you're just random tech that I could use however I want. And I think that's some of the same problems today with AI, right? AI can answer or do the sky's the limit, right? It could do anything. But then when people try to implement that into their organizations, you go, well, where do I start? What is the use? Is this a marketing tool? Is this a sales tool? Is this an engineering tool? And so I love your opinion because when I think about AI today and I go, it's not just about having a platform that can answer stuff. It's also about thinking through the use case and then the data behind it. Because I know that's when we originally met with Amar. It's like having really good data that
right.
then can drive that decision. So love your perspective. Like, is AI how AI might be changing startups and how they work?
Yeah, I want to call out two things, Carlos. Like one, I really want to hit upon this use case because I think that's the second point I was trying to make, which is we talk about like, hey, the framework that you have built, and like, hey, what I understand is that a customer should be able to do a value assessment the first time they meet you. It should be super simple. It should be in their language. Whatever it is that I pitch, it's an iPhone or it's a service that I'm saying, hey, I'll do, Carlos, I'll come into your company, do value strategy. Great. Very quickly they should have an assessment, some sort of tool or something in their mind to go, hey, I think if I put X money to Carlos, I'll get Y returns. That's the first part. Then the second part has to the logical next step is, great, I think there is value in this, but how am I going to fit it into what I'm doing today? So it's like I see the value. So there comes the use case that you talked about, which is the use case is nothing but you're giving me a product or a service, and it needs to fit into what I'm doing. Or where do I fit it in? And these days with the tech stack bloat and everything else that's going on, there's like 200 tools to solve everything. And so then I'm thinking, okay, or it's a service. Hey, maybe it's a, I'm not just talking product. It could be like I offer a strategic services thing. I'm going to come and build strategy for you. I'm saying, hey, the best minds across the table would be thinking, I love Carlos, but how am I going to get his value? How am I going to get all these people to agree to his value strategy? Because hey, I'll pay you 5,000, and Carlos is going to give me something for 50,000. But how do I realize that value realization? The path to value realization is through the use case. So I
Right.
feel like, hey, if you don't start with the use case, then I think you're dead on arrival. And then you get to this AI thing. Just the AI has been around for a while, or some version of it. I think now we just need to acknowledge this. We back in '91, I wrote some code on an artificial neural network. So we were training some sort of things going like, hey, so again, we knew that some concepts of this was going on. I also feel like we're in a transition phase to what's going on with AI and its applications. It's just the beginning, like the internet. So it's garbage in, garbage out. And so for me, the AI, like Carlos, if you think of what happened between 95 and 2000 with the search engine wars, there were a bunch of people that were trying to solve the problem of search. Then it got consolidated. You only had Yahoo and then Google. And then now one would say that it's Google, Bing, and then Yahoo in terms of search. So similarly, I think if you look at the models, I already feel the market is cornered. So you have Google, you have OpenAI, you have Perplexity, or like, hey, you have Llama, and then of course, like, hey, you have the what I think is the dark horse, which is Elon with his XAI, and the sheer access to data that they have. Forget the politics. To me, I think that the reason I still think that, hey, Tesla has a huge advantage, and Google on Waymo. So my example is automotive self-driving robocars. It's simply a product of how many cars are out there in the road and how many miles that they've driven. If you just think about how much data they're collecting, it's going to be impossible for a new person to come and say, hey, I'll do full self-driving, because they already have cornered the data part of the model. So it's going to be hard to come and say, I'll build a better mousetrap. So back to your point of, I'm passionate about that. That's why I called my company Pristine Data. Is I said, hey, everyone's thinking of AI. Not enough people are thinking about it's garbage in, garbage out. It's like having purposeful data, purposeful and purpose built. So we're not going to try to solve the problems of the world. We're only going to try to solve these three problems. And for that, we have the specific data set.
Data for it.
That's right.
I agree with you. Hey, Sugar, I could talk to you all day, but I'm going to run out of time. So let me flip this back on you a second. Tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background.
So I'll keep it brief. The I've worked. So I've been around for, feel like I've been working for 30 plus years, in a combination of startups and very large companies. This is my third startup, which is Pristine Data, like, what I would call rank startup. My first startup was a person behind a desk and just a phone back in the day. Nothing else going on. So it was really a startup. Like, so third time around the block. Hopefully, third time's the charm. And during the course of this time, I focused mainly on basically using data to do a lot of relevant personalization over time, using different tools and techniques. But ultimately, the belief was always that If you reach someone with something that's relevant, they would basically react to it more positively than not. So, and then within that, Carlos, I've worked with companies like Digital Impact, which got acquired by Axiom, which is a data company. DI was a digital marketing company. Then I worked at Responses, which was acquired by Oracle. Again, like, hey, really be focused on the whole digital marketing platform. And then the last company I worked with was Six Sense, which is all about intent and data and modeling. So that's kind of been the span of my experience.
Excellent. Um, what are you working on these days? What's your 1% edge?
Ooh, so super excited to be working on the pristine data. What we're trying to do is again kind of upend this whole thing about this. How does what is the problems that sales and marketing have today? Which has been an ongoing battle through the ups and downs of the economic cycle. Just briefly, what I want to talk about is if you look at pre 2022, it was a bull market, interest rates were low, everybody was getting funded. You could easily build pipeline, you didn't have to work as hard.
Right.
2022, mid 2022, the switch flipped, and then what happened is companies, when interest rates goes high, companies cut jobs and then productivity. They focus on increasing productivity. So then they started to ask the salesperson to also do the CSM's job. It's like, hey, not only do I want you to sell the new business, I also want you to grow the existing business, which typically falls again when funds are easy to get, you invest in those kinds of aspects. And so now I feel again the cycle is turning, or it's going to turn. It is, that's my bet that it's going to turn back again. That when I spoke to these folks in those kinds of roles, their biggest problem and where they wanted the value creation was, hey, I'm being asked to do both jobs now. With the advent of AI, companies are not in a rush to go back and staff up again like before. How can I now do my job? I still want to generate pipeline. I still want to do all these things, but I just don't have the time. So and there is another factor, which is that it's very hard for me to in the sheer volume of messaging that goes out. It's very hard for me to differentiate from the noise. The best sort of
Right.
people and marketing people were, I really want to do the research on this individual, the company. What's their problems? What's their challenges? Back to the beginning of this podcast, how do I tell that value story? So that's that's really what I'm building with pristine data, and hopefully that's my 1% edge. Is I want to give that 1% edge to everyone. That edge that, hey, what if I told you you could walk into a room with, look, there is no substitute for preparation. It's like working out. I can give you a pill to lose weight fast, but you still need to work out a little bit. It's not like, hey, I just, you can do no work and you can walk into the room. But what if I did tell you that you could walk into a room with those five, six different, people in the buying committee, but then you knew exactly what is the right story to tell each person, what would resonate with them, what is the value story that you need to do with little to no preparation. That's the
Excellent.
1% that I'm trying to give. Yeah.
I love it. And if Shig, if people want to get a hold of you or connect with you or learn more about your company, what's the best way for them to reach out?
I would say LinkedIn or my email address, which I will give you, which is simply Ashok, ASHOK, at pristinedata.ai.
Thank you. Hey, I appreciate you having me on the show and sharing your story. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Carlos. I look forward to talking to you some more beyond the podcast, but really thank you for having me here.
You got it. All right, folks, that does it for this week's episode. I hope you found some value in it. Please comment back, subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. And until next time, I wish you nothing but the greatest success. Thanks again, Ashok.
Thanks, Carlos.